All right, so what's cool about what you just learned is that if you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal and you know one of the measures of one of those angles, you can use all of those properties that you just learned to figure out all of the rest of the angles. So you now have a ton of different methods to be able to figure out what each one of those angles are. So there are a bunch of different ways that you could use to figure out these angles. You could use what you learned last week to say, well, if this is 110 degrees, I know that this angle corresponds with D, and I know that corresponding angles are congruent. So I know that D has to also be 110 degrees as well. Right? You can think of it that way. You can say, same thing with last week. You could say, well, if I know this angle is 110 degrees, that is supplementary with this angle, meaning it forms a straight line. This angle and this angle together form this straight line, and we know straight lines are 180 degrees. So if this is 110 degrees, you know that A has to be 70 degrees. Right? And you could work your way through and figure out every single one of those angles using those two properties. But now you have even more properties that you could use to help you figure it out quicker. One of them being the vertical angles, right? So if this is 110 degrees, which angle is this vertical to? It's vertical to angle B. They're directly across from one another. So since this is 110, you know that B is also 110 degrees. Which makes sense because if A is 70 degrees and B is 110 degrees, A and B form a straight line, which is 180, and 70 plus 110 should equal 180. So we're good. We're checked off on that one. A, we figured out already, was 70 degrees. A is vertical with C. They're directly across from each other. They share this vertex. So A and C, because they're vertical angles are congruent. So C has to be 70 degrees as well. So let's mark up what we know. That's 110, that one's 70. And now you could use corresponding angles to figure out the rest of them, or you could use those other two properties that you just learned today, which is alternate interior and alternate exterior, right? Those are congruent as well. So C, that is an interior angle. It's on the inside of these parallel lines, right? So C, B, D, and E are all of my inside or my interior angles. And we know alternate or opposite interior angles are congruent. So B is alternate interior with D. So that means that B and D both have to be 110 degrees. And are we right? Yes, we are. We figured that one out, and it works for the same property here also. C and E are alternate interior angles. They're both on the inside of the parallel lines, and they are opposite sides of the transversal. So if C is 70 degrees, then E also has to be 70 degrees. So we can mark E is 70 degrees, which also makes sense because if D is 110 and E is 70, they form a straight line. So it all checks out, which is good. We're happy about that. Now what about our alternate exterior angles? Our exterior angles, our outside angles, are going to be this one is on the outside of the parallel lines. A is outside of those parallel lines. F and G are also exterior angles or outside angles. So the alternate exterior, alternating or opposite, 110 is an alternate exterior with G. So G also has to be 110 degrees as well. And F is an alternate exterior with A. And so if A is 70, then F also has to be 70 degrees. and each of those check out, you're able to figure out what each of those angles are using those properties. All right, nicely done.